Welcome to ART,
the Adventure Race Training Podcast.
I'm Nick Hurff.
And I'm Jason Magness.
And with years of coaching experience and formal education in human performance, we've helped numerous athletes to achieve their goals and increase their self-efficacy. My background comes from formal graduate level education, coaching a variety of collegiate teams and professional endurance athletes. My athletes range from everyday racers to NCAA All-Americans and multiple world record holders.
And I'm the captain of Team Bend Racing. I've devoted the past 2.5 decades of my life to adventure racing, competing at the top level for over a decade. But I draw a lot of my coaching and training philosophy on my years as a top-level climbing, acrobatics, and highlining coach, essentially trying to minimize the learning curve on notoriously difficult sports. And I've also coached a few world champions. So together, Nick and I have some great successes.
Ultimately, we're here to share our knowledge and expertise with the community to help you prepare for your next big race. Our goal is that these conversations provide valuable insights to elevate your adventure.
All right, let's get started.
Thank you for joining us. It's Nick and Jason here. And this is the first episode. So we're here wanting to discuss what our purpose is for this podcast and what we hope to achieve. So you have some expectations.
Right. Like, why does the world need another podcast? I know why, because there is no podcast for what we're podcasting about.
I don't think so. No.
I mean, we are both adventure racers. Well, we do a lot of things, but we're both adventure racers. We're both coaches. And I've certainly noticed in my coaching, I mostly coach adventure racers, but there's just not a lot of information specifically towards adventure racing. And it's a pretty freaking hard, complex sport. Wouldn't you agree, Nick?
Totally. One thing is there's a whole vast variety of what adventure races look like in general, whereas something like triathlon or a marathon is relatively the same regardless where you do it. And anytime you have a multi-sport, there's going to be a whole bunch of different training styles and philosophies.
I mean, especially because I think up to this point, a lot of the ways people are gaining like training ideas for adventure racing are to look at these different sports that are not adventure racing, right? Which there's a level of efficacy there, but if you're just looking at ultra running, that doesn't really include mental navigation, sleep deprivation as much, biking, paddling, all these things. If you're just looking at paddling, so you really have this complicated sport where fitness is a very important part, but it's also hard to get fit at all these things at the same time, right?
Completely, yeah. And then when we look at slightly separate from the sport, and we look at the lens of individuals, I mean, we have individuals in adventure racing that are ranging from kids under the age of 10 to people in their 70s. And I would say the bulk of racers are in their 30s through 50s. And you get a lot of people with a variety of health conditions, histories, surgeries, knee issues, you name it. And so really adapting training to the individual for adventure racing, because of its multi-sport function, just allows you to have a whole ton of different approaches and styles and ways to get after it.
One of the things that I'm really excited about is as the sport grows, like I've been in this sport for forever. I'm not going to say how long because that will date me. But, it used to be that adventure racing was just super hard and there was really no kind of good roadmap. I don't know if you got into it early enough, but it really just used to be like who can suffer the most. But the reality is the races have gotten harder. They've gotten faster. They've gotten more complex over the years. And it's not enough to just be good at suffering anymore if you want to survive these things. Like you have to actually train. You have to be smart about your training, your recovery, if you want to be competitive, especially, or just finish these things. And I think it's really cool with sports science now how we can learn from ultra distance cycling and Tour de France and ultras and marathons, but then we can also learn from our experience because Nick and I both race. I mean, that's the coolest thing about this podcast. We're not just like some retired athletes that turned into coaches, right? Nick and I are both racing hard a lot. And so we're constantly testing these ideas about training methodology and how it applies to adventure races. And it's really cool to see when it works. And then we're going to pass that on to you, right?
Exactly. And it's something where the racers that are racing at high levels will gain some insights. And just the average person who's a weekend warrior just wants to kind of get out there and just improve a bit would benefit a lot from this as well. And cool outcome of this that may not be measurable is, can we see this gap that's emerging between the average racer and the elite racer start to kind of come together a little more?
And I think as a race director, that's my secret goal, right? Because as a race director right now, you're planning a course for the elite level athletes that takes the back of the pack athletes literally 3 times as long to complete. And that's a big strain. So come on, listen to the podcast, do your training, get smart, and we'll make it easier on all the race directors out there as well. And, this is a pretty complex topic more than a lot of training podcasts, because we do have to occasionally discuss like sleep deprivation for longer races, not overtraining. Being the coach to my wife, Chelsea, who's, arguably one of the top endurance female racers on the planet right now, like it's really easy to overtrain, right? Adventure racing kind of lends itself to this idea I have to do a lot of everything, especially if you're training for an expedition race. And we're not going to say that it's not time intensive, but we're going to give you a lot of kind of tools to measure how much you actually need to train and how to keep your training effective. Because, ultimately that's a good coach's goal, is to make sure you're not overtraining so you stay effective with that.
Yeah, and maximizing your time available to train so it fits in your lifestyle. So let's say you're a mother with, 3 kids and working full time, your time available to train is limited. So you should be able to gain some ways on how to maximize that time you have during the week, and then maybe get out a little longer on the weekend and make it to where whatever your goals are and the time you have, you can make them reasonable and actually maximize it so you can perform better.
Yeah. And that's I think one of the early myths that we're going to dispel is you don't need 15, 20 hours a week to be a good adventure racer to train. Like that would be fine. You'd have to be, aware of not overtraining there, but you can do it. We've had successful athletes work on 5, 8 hours a week and still feel very competitive and able in adventure races. And so we want people to have that roadmap regardless of where they are in their time constraints.
Exactly. And for the person listening, if you spend 2 hours a day on the weekend and you spend an hour a day with a rest day, that's kind of what 8 hours is. And then 5's even less. So it's very, very achievable.
We also want to try to be entertaining and have some great guests on this podcast, because we also recognize that we don't know everything, that there's a lot of ways to look at this sport. We want to bring in elite athletes from other fields that have crossed over into adventure racing, coaches, physios, and just get as much of a knowledge base that it is, scientifically backed, so that you guys can be effective in your training, your recovery, just your approach, joy. And some of this is, we'll have some navigation talks. This is meant to be a very fun, and really it's, for my goal is to make sure I don't get left behind, because Nick has all this like college graduate cred and I have to compete against him in races. And so the reality is, selfishly, like I'm just making sure that I'm not missing anything by eking out. So you'll hear me ask questions to Nick and I'll pretend like I already know the answer and I just want him to I want to hear him say it, but really it's me fishing for good information that I may have missed.
On the flip side, there's no real studies on adventure racing or anything specific. So the experience of coaching goes a long way too, which I think we're going to get a lot of insight there from Jason as well. And then a pro tip, when Ben passes you, you just go for the meniscus with your foot and try to knock him down.
Yeah. Actually, for me, it's the hips. My knees are like bulletproof. If you do a side kick in the hip, that's definitely going to slow me down.
But see, I thought with your metal hip, it's literally bulletproof in your hip now.
I mean, yeah, that's true. So I don't know. You'll have to experiment, right? And yeah, I mean, we'll teach you all sorts of tips and tricks. Like one of our goals that I just want to be clear of is, for a while as a team, when we discovered stuff, we kind of kept them as secrets. Like we'd have training methodologies and nutrition strategies or all these things that as a competitive athlete, you're kind of like, ooh, we figured some stuff out that really helps us. But part of this podcast is making the barrier of entry and the barrier of high level competition less for a lot of these racers. So we're not just all randomly experimenting with stuff. And so, if you want some honesty and some good conversation, we hope that you join us for all of our episodes.
We're excited. I'm pumped. So with that said, we'll get rolling on the first episode.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. Looking forward to it.